very important for us to see and touch and believe and understand history and whatever they show us, but they are really boring for our generation the way they are. Former generations were used to being patient and read stuff. We are being hit with so much constant moving tons of information per second, so museums are boring the way they are, for us. And for the younger people more. So we should make them more interactive and
Thank
I
you.
don't know, alive.
Thank you.
That's my idea.
Also,
Yes?
for a pragmatic economic point of view, it can offer you space, free space that you can do your LARP in without maybe paying the rent and stuff.
And they're usually quite nice spaces, right? Okay, so we do have anything
Yeah,
else?
I just wanted to add that very authentic places, so you don't need a additional setting sometimes for the museum.
So what do you think? Why is it important for you, Arpad?
For me, it's important. So let's start from the beginning. I'm a historian originally, and I started to work in the Hungarian National Museum as an educator, as a part-time job, and before that, and in the same time as well, I organized urban adventure games and escape rooms and team buildings. And I realized that, wow, this knowledge, what I bring from these games, is very important in the museum as well, because museums want to give experience nowadays. I will get into these museums nowadays topic deeper as well, but they want to give experience, but originally they are temples of science. And if you are a researcher, you can research something. To give experience, it's a totally different interpretation and profession, so it's useful. And on the other hand, I very love the concept of the museums, and its core is to give a message and give knowledge through an object, and the object is the medium. Or let's see the Parthenon in Athens. We can say that it is an object, but it is more a heritage site. So if I talk about museums, I talk about heritage sites as well. And yeah, and it's important to know about history, because just as we talked about it, I don't know, half an hour ago, history is important to understand people in general. And why is it important for you?
So for me, as an experienced designer, so my name is Nandor. My past 10 years was about creating connection in stories in the games. I come from a tourism background, but I've been designing LARPs for quite a while now as well. So for me, I think that LARP is a really powerful tool for storytelling. And museums are sitting on a ton of stories, and somehow they do not want to show these for the most part. And the most recent experience that I just started to talk about was yesterday when we went out to see the Parthenon. And it's not easy to tackle that site, right? I mean, of course, it's wonderful, it has a lot of stories, but if you go in there as a visitor, there is not a whole lot of help for you. And in the past few years, in the past year that we started cooperating with ARPAD, we came up with different methods using role as a tool to create an experience, to tell a story of a museum, to make personal connection, to connect you to the object, to connect you to the topics and the themes of the museums. So this is why I think this is important. So yeah, tell us about museums.
So what is the museum for you? Is it a boring stuff where you have to go as a school kid and it's just all ladies and men try to say something, or it is like the night at the museum, full of adventures and interesting things to explore? If it is more what is on the left, raise your left hand. If it is more the right hand, and you can mix it somehow for free. Yeah. Okay.
Oh wait, which one is the right?
Right is Night at the Museum. Left is the
okay.
boring.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. So we have things to do here. Thank you very much. Actually, museums do not think about themselves like this. They start in the last few decades, but original museums are this. Yeah, if you been on the Butcher game 2 days ago, you have seen the replica of this little bird, and this picture was taken in the museum, and this is the back office of the museum, full of objects, researchers, and so it's more about science than experience. Nowadays, museums started to think about themselves as a place of experience, and the number of visitors is more and more important. This is today the most important number relating to the museums, but this is actually the small part what they do. Let's go ahead, please. The first and most important task or mission of the museums to collect, preserve, and research objects. So more or less, museums are like dragon sitting on the treasure. You can read about it. There are some books, but what you generally see is only a small part when they share this, and its medium is the exhibition. So what you can see on the exhibition is in general around, depends on the museum, but generally is around 10% maximum of the whole collection. This is why museums has storages, and this is why they have temporary exhibitions, because they had a huge collection, and there are some artifacts that they want to show, but there is no place for it in the permanent exhibition. So museums are, and this is what one of you said in the last few days, are like an iceberg. You can see only the top, but there is a huge deepness behind, and this is why museums are very expensive, and this is why museums are not it's not a business simply generally, because it's a huge money to keep, to collect, preserve, and research these objects, and yeah, museum professionals are necessary. So what about this top of the iceberg, with this experience? What can museums do with this?
So there is a question. What I see is that museums have an experience problem, and the reason why they have that problem is that they don't think of themselves to begin with as a place providing experiences. And it's so again, right now, when I'm talking about experiences, this is kind of like a buzzword, right? This is it comes from all corners of of your life these days. If you interact with companies, you know, with your phone provider, it's all about your experience, and they're sending you questionnaires about, you know, whether your customer service experience was some such. So again, and what is the reason for this? We live in the part of in history. This is the bit when your experiences have become the cornerstone of the economy. So this is not just the attention economy. So they, of course, they want to grab your attention and they want to provide you with an experience. This is fairly recent, the past decade or so, since this became the phenomenon. Economy didn't used to, I mean, for the most part of human history, it used to be about extracting commodities, extracting goods. Can you tell me a commodity, resource?
Iron.
For instance, iron. Anything else?
Wheat. Right.
Wheat, or yeah, wheat is perfect. Let's go with wheat. So wheat is a commodity. You know, you plant the seeds, then you harvest, you reap the harvest, and then maybe you sell it to the next village. So again, this is commodities. This is for the most part of human history. This is how the economy and trade worked. Next level comes with the Industrial Revolution, when you make goods and you actually sell them. Well, came maybe a bit earlier than the Industrial Revolution. In the case of the bread, you know, you make bread. You make different kind of foodstuffs from the from wheat, and then maybe you sell it in your village, or you take it. You know, if it's possible, when we get to a point when it's possible to package it, you take it a little bit further away. But then, from that point on, it's a good. You manufacture it. You make it. Next level comes with the 20th century, when services became important. So, what can you think of a service in connection with bread? What is a service?
There is a delivery bread.
There is a bread delivery. It's quite a sophisticated service. But if you think of a restaurant where they serve you bread, that's also a service to some extent. So this is very 20th century experiences. So what happens when we take the wheat and the bread and turn it into an experience?
You could have a bread tasting of different
There
types
you go.
of bread.
Or
bread making.
the bread making, the handcrafting coming back to the forefront, especially with the pandemic. This became massive, right?
Or you just go to the bakery and they teach you how to make it, and inside of
A bread making workshop.
Yeah,
Where you can actually experience how to make bread, where you became so distanced from the process itself. Now it is an
you see all the
experience.
elements of system that they use to do it.
Indeed. So this is it. This is basically where we are right now in terms of where the economy is really kind of turning. So everyone and their grandmother wants to give you an experience. And museums are not excluded from this factor. Of course.
What's with the last?
What's with the last one? So this is transformations, guiding transformations. This is a theory set out by Joe Pine and Gilmore in their book in the late 90s, The Experience Economy. And the next stage will be guiding transformation. So this is, if you think about how popular are workshops and education, and like private, not necessarily institutionalized programs are these days, this is pretty much where we're heading. So in this case, no longer the experience. This is a little bit of looking into the future, but in the future, the hypothesis is that transformations are going to be very important in the economy. So not the experience itself, but learning something, giving you a transformative experience. Some say that LARP can do that, right?
Like workshops. Like workshop when you when one day you learn something new skills, then will
The difference there is that here you stage an experience and you design for the experience, and with the transformation you actually sell that there will be a transformation. So of course, and it's kind of it's a little bit of little deeper. That's so to say. Again, I would say this is where we are at, and this is a hypothesis. That could be the next stage of the central, where the center of economic value will go.
Okay.
But for our purposes, let's talk more about experiences, because again, museums, they do experiments with many museums, especially in Europe, mostly in the western part of it, but also elsewhere. So this is, who can tell me what this is?
Starry Night by
Starry Nights by Van Gogh, indeed. So, indeed.
I'm Dutch, so you know.
Yeah, Van Gogh, indeed.
Thank you.
So I have Dutch examples. So a lot of good examples in the Netherlands. This basically gives you an immersive experience. Another buzzword, immersive. So you can actually walk into the painting. You can experience it, up close. I'll give you another example, and this is from Arnhem. Another one from the Netherlands, the Airborne Museum in Arnhem, in the Hartenstein. And basically what happens here is that you arrive as a visitor, you get a briefing, you essentially, it's in the basement of the museum, there is a proper museum with exhibits as well. but it's in the basement. You go down there. You receive a briefing. Then you enter a glider. They show you a little movie about approaching Arnhem in Operation Market Garden, and then you crash land over the site with your glider, and then you enter the shut up ruin of Arnhem City. So with a lot of sound effects and visuals. So again, a staged experience in a museum. Is this the case in Hungary, or I'd just say is this the general way museums think about experience? Probably not. If I can sum up museum experience generally, and again, this is a bit over the top, I'm generalizing, but this is more like this, right? So it's not necessarily, none of these are in Hungary, so that's a Mr. Bean episode, and this is in Vienna. However, this is my experience. If I go to a general museum, like a city museum in Hungary, I will probably find, showcases, and I cannot touch anything, and a lot of written texts that are really hard to understand, because again, written by academics for the most part. What do you do if you encounter these kind of situations? Arpa, do you have a lot of experience with cooperating with museums?
So museums want experiences, want visitors, but they live in their world. I talked about it earlier, focusing on objects, focusing on science, and from this perspective, sometimes they need some help or cooperation to help them to focus on the visitor and give him or her an experience. It is always important for them to be authentic and follow the message of the museum itself. So if you want to cooperate in a museum, I recommend it, because it is a very exciting challenge, and very new ideas can come up with this cooperation. How to do that? First of all, don't ask for money. Probably they don't have money. They are not here to finance you. They are here to promote their message, promote their topic, and they can give you many things: location, support, promotion, but not money. Please, the first one.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like that.
So the second, connect values and recognize interests. Every museum is different, and it's much better for them if you understand that this is not an experience center, or it is not only about having fun. It is also about authenticity, give some knowledge, and promote classical values. Maybe we can say something like this. Promote, for example, ancient Greek greatness in the Acropolis. Third, understand the system. I mean the system of the museum itself. It is not business. Generally, there is a state institution behind who gives money to the museum, mainly for the underwater part, and it's also true for many institutions and organizations. You should find out who makes decision, who gives the money, who you need friends within, you need supporters within, and find your champion. It is related. So find that one person who understands you, whom you understand, and who supports you from inside. Because if you call someone from as a cold call, probably it won't be successful. If you have a friend inside, he will know who is the guy who stops the party, or who you need.
This is so good.
So yeah, that's right.
It's
not.
not Greek, Polish too, like the same.
Place LARPers in important positions, or if they're not LARPers, turn them into one.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the museum game show or Museum Játékmester in Hungarian, what we organized in 2019. Anyway, it was in the Hungarian National Museum. Why was that possible? Because I worked there until 2018. But when I quit, I said that okay, I want to design games for museums, and I feel like there are too many operational stuff as an employee here, so I quit, but let's cooperate. And that was the deal. This is the first event about games, specifying to games in Hungary for museums. So there was two parts. One was about lectures and workshops, and it was for professionals. This is on the right side. You can see a workshop there in the lapidarium of the museum, so it was within the exhibition, and the other part was partly within the exhibition as well. This is the game show where we invited game designers and museum games and escape games and tabletop games. So games focusing on education. Yeah, and that was a public event, and I loved this event. Unfortunately, there wasn't as many visitors as we wanted, but so many new connections were formed between the arrived or the invited groups. So you can imagine what happened next year, COVID. But we organized an online version for that, focusing on only the professional, the conference-like serious stuff. Yeah, and it's also a Facebook group, so there is a community behind with 430 members. Let's go ahead.
So essentially, this was an event where museum professionals connected with game professionals, and this is where our connection with iPad started. When we met before the game show, and he invited us to host a LARP inside the museum. So that's basically it, and we created we designed a game specifically for this event, and it took place right in the Roman lapidarium. We created a world based on Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere, but in this case it was not London below, it was Budapest below. So this was also the first game. It was originally intended to be a LARP community-facing event. Let's get the LARPers into the museum because we have an excellent location finally. You know, it's available. iPad made it available for us essentially almost for free. So this is great. However, this is also the first time when we got a question. Okay, this is nice that you host this private event. You know, people can sign up for it, and you know they can play a game. But what about the rest of the visitors? What about the rest of the people who come to the game show, who want to kind of experience all of the games in the game show, try the video games, the board games, cannot join the LARP as well? Well, okay, we're not sure. Well, let's try it. Let's say yes to this. And we went with 3 layers of participation. So this is when we started to also design for non-LARPers to come also to the LARP, but to be able to take part in the game just for a few minutes, you know, just to be there, you know, for 5 minutes, and then if you don't like it, you can leave. So that's basically what happens. We started, so the 3 levels of cooperation was we had non-player characters or game master characters that were veteran LARPers or reenactors. So we also involved Roman reenactors because, of course, it was a Roman lapidarium. So and we connected them to the items of the exhibit. So one of the so there was a sarcophagus in the museum.
What is a lapidarium?
Lapidarium is a collection of stones. So it's basically a room full of stones. Lapis means stone in Latin. So that's the lapidarium. And of course it turned into a larpidarium. It's a room full of larp. So again, this was one level of participation. As a LARPer or a player, you could sign up as a person coming to a special event, a special kind of guided tour, where you'll probably go into a different world. You fall through the cracks, and you'll be in Budapest below, where the tram froze. So that was second layer, but we also created a third level of participation for the participants of the game show. So I was there at the door, and they gave briefings for people who could join in. Brief, like 5-minute briefings. We created character cards, and they became spirits. So they were playing ghosts. And all the others were they were briefed on how to interact with ghosts. So this was what made this game
So
special.
it was easy to get out from the game.
Yes.
Those who kind of
Without
like
harming the
yeah.
gameplay for the actual player.
Indeed. So there was this layer of and again, what happens here? We had about 40 players, including the informed characters, and we had about 20 to 30 people just joining, and some of them stayed for the whole event, some of them left after 5 minutes, and it was okay, because this is what we kind of wanted to give a flavor of what's going on, give a short, like a micro experience for the visitors.
And what was the Roman LARP about? What was the action of the plot?
What was the plot? The plot was about, so again, for the players, it was about trying to get back to their reality. Do they want to get back? And for the for the mid level of the participation, so for these guys, they had their own conflicts to kind of play out to make the world believable and livable. And some of these characters are actually based on historical characters. Like the sarcophagus that I was trying to say, so in the sarcophagus it belonged, of course it was a Roman noble's sarcophagus, and of course we created a character based on that name and whatever it was on the inscription. And again, the intention was to bring them closer to items in the museum and to spaces in the museum, and so that to give them a personal connection to a few stories that are otherwise pretty hard to get if you just go down to the museum and look at stones. Yeah, I'm gonna move on to the next one, which was this game was not well, unfortunately, yeah, because of COVID, we wrote the game, but we have still yet to put it on. So we intended this to happen in 2020. So this is about, and now this became a little bit even more, we have more closer cooperation with the museum. We had the curator of a fashion-based exhibit. So it was fashion and communism. So this is why it's fashionable dictatorship. So in Hungary there was a really special character, a historical figure, Clara Rothschild, who was the head of fashion during communist Hungary. So the exhibit was about her life. And we created the game. It was to be a fashion show in the museum, in the same space, but of course with an entirely different vibe. And with this for this game, we were preparing. Cooperated with the curator of the exhibit. So basically, she gave the go-ahead for the characters and for the entire, and we would have used clothes even. Arpad, can you tell us about something different, different kind of cooperation?
It's another storyline, journey to the beginnings. It happened in 2019 as well. It is a tag, which means theatrical adventure game, and I was part of the creative team from more or less half of the project, and there was a director and there were actors, and it was an EU project connecting four archaeological places next to the Danube, and put the same, more or less the same storyline on it, and promote, connect these archaeological sites and promote them. The experience itself was like, you had a group, you played yourself, so it wasn't a LARP, and there was, you arrived to the lecture of an archaeologist where an accident happened, and you had to go back to the past to find a person, a lost person. And yeah, so you as yourself found yourself in the past, and you tried to communicate with the actors who give you tasks, mini games like create something, count something, put it there or there. The communication was not easy, but it was portable to every country because it was an ancient. So there was a language created for this game, and we used for that ancient Indo-European words, and the actors used these words. So maybe you had some connections, like it was the same Proto-European language what we used for the Wuchedol game, for the names, like Domu is home. So you felt like they're speaking on their own language, and you walked from actor to actor. So it was a line for groups, and at the end you arrived back to the tent where the archaeologist took place. Yeah, it is an existing genre. It is coming from theater, and the actors and the director as well is coming from improvisative theater and alternative theater. It was pretty exciting to be within this project, and it wasn't the last one because with more or less the same team, it's continued. Yeah, do you want to add something to this?
About Journey, yes, that's right. So it's interesting to see how theater adventure game, it's kind of a similar genre, very close genre to LARP. It's a participative theater style. It also very much draws inspiration from point-and-click games. So essentially, this is a station game. You know, there is a first station, you meet an actor, you need to perform something, and then you get the clue on how to go over to the next station. So that's basically how it worked. It was quite like early LARPs in Hungary that had this linear style. Alright, or the project that we worked on together, Arpad as the creative lead, or Shared Heritage, the Wuchedol culture, which was the continuation of the journey to the beginnings. And this is where theatrical adventure games, so participative theater, was merging with LARP. So, and some of you had the chance to play this very game that we created. We actually created two games, and one was more game-like, and this was a more LARP-like game that we tested during the training just before Portal. So, how this project came to be, we had, so Arpad collected a number of
It wasn't me, it was a project manager. So
yeah.
in the creative team, we were, there was a project manager, there were archaeologists, there were museum educators, drama educators, theater director, Nandi coming from
tourism and different
tourism and games and LARP, and me. Do I miss someone?
I think that's it. So it's a big creative team.
Yeah, that was a relatively big creative team, and it was really challenging to find the common language, because words means different things for a drama educator and a LARPer and a theater professional. In the one hand, in the other hand, it started with the archaeologist. Okay, what do we know about this culture, this Wuchedol culture, and how do we know that? And the whole game started from these ideas, and the RPGs were there always as a control. So we didn't do anything which is not authentic, and it was also challenging to do something with the things like what did they believe about the world? How was the society? We don't know. We have very, very tiny clues, but actually we don't know. And
Which is
what
great,
to do in the
because
game.
it leaves a lot of interpretation for creating culture and creating story. So again, and of course what we did is we made as many objects as the focus of the game as possible. After this, let's leave this at the to the end, or should we?
We can read to the end. Yeah.
So let's just run through
Yeah.
what makes LARP at the museum special. Like, for instance, this game, Return to the Valley of the Wolf, it had multiple layers of participation as well, so participation is definitely a big thing. You have to think about participation that goes beyond beyond the LARP audience. You have to think about audience, of what kind of audience will be drawn by the topic, or what kind of audience the museum has.
Yeah.
Let's move over, okay?
Yeah. So we found these 4 keywords. What makes LARP at the museum? Special participation, cooperation, museum, and education. Yeah.
Let's go into a little bit deeper. So
yeah, participation. It is not for LARPers, and it was very interesting to see which ball game for LARPers, because it was a totally different vibe than the same game for people who arrived to interactive theater experience.
I'm gonna build on that, because it's not only for LARPers. So basically, the 3 layers of our participation here was about, of course, the first layer was actors. So we had 3 actors playing the kind of directing the lead characters, like game master characters, and then we had 6 player characters that were intended to be played by LARPers or whoever is more inclined to play. And all of the other ways to participate was essentially you could participate as an audience, and then you could decide how deep you want to go in. So we did not force anyone to participate. You could opt out. You could be just a spectator, just a passive spectator of what's going on there. But some of the participants actually ended up connecting pretty closely without having any background in LARP or theater.
One more thing for that, this is also an answer for the question, oh, can I watch LARP or can I just try it? I don't want to play it, just first let's see what this is. Yeah, this participation level is more or less this, I think.
It's a good tool to create more accessible games. Let's move on. Okay, so cooperation. So all of these games were definitely done in cooperation with reenactors and actors. Which one do you think? Which is which? Which picture is which? These could be actors or reenactors, or these are the actors.
No, the
Which are the actors?
reenactors are to the left.
They're the reenactors.
Yep.
They're the actors.
Yep.
Who thinks otherwise?
The other one.
Left.
The other ways?
On the left.
Yeah, these are the actors.
Yep.
Yeah, those are the actors. So indeed. So
The reenactors usually have better costumes.
also, this is Roman times. And this is prehistoric times. So the costumes are actually, they meant
So the
to
reenactors
represent.
are on the left.
Hmm?
The reenactors are.
So these are the reenactors. These are the actors.
Ah.
Yeah.
So why do they not have better costume? It's ridiculous.
Because they are more authentic, and these guys are like, you see that everything is clean, and so it's like, you see that they got this clothes like from like 5 minutes before.
I mean, with historical reenactment, looks are very important, like to be authentic and stuff. Let's focus on acting it out, from what I know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that brought along, of course, its challenges. For instance, actors, of course, these guys were actually very well trained in improv theater, but LARP was something new to them. And again, they didn't know what to expect initially from playing together with LARPers. And of course, this perspective changed after quite a number of shows that we did together. And then the game worked out quite nicely. And of course, for reenactors, the key thing is authenticity. So is for the museums. So that's kind of an interesting perspective to be joined with. Another layer of cooperation for both of these projects, Journey and for Wuchadol, was that we worked together with museum professionals. Actually, it was one of the lessons learned from the Journey to the Beginnings project that was we had archaeologists in the creative team of Wuchadol. So we can just turn to them that, hey, how was this? Yeah, so how was agriculture in early Bronze Age Croatia? What do we know about this? And then, of course, they had a lot of input.
Or they said we don't have information. On the right side, you can see the final conference of Journey to the Beginnings with the lead archaeologist who supported the project, and cooperation between archaeology and art practice in Journey to the Beginnings. This is the title of his lecture. It was thinking about the connection between art and archaeology, and the conclusion, or kind of conclusion, was that it is more or less the same. We find objects and we try to interpret it somehow. We try to find out how it was used. Obviously, archaeologists and artists has totally different tools for that and goals with that, but deep inside we do the same, and it is a very interesting process to learn from each other.
Yeah, for me it was the most fascinating thing how the archaeologists, they are actually also doing world building based on what kind of objects they're finding. So this is kind of interesting. Of course, yeah, indeed. So museum perspectives are coming in. Can you tell us about the big controversy of the trousers?
Yes. Among museums, sometimes, no, I start from somewhere else. I went to the Frida Kahlo exhibition with a group of museum professionals for a guided tour. And the first sentence of our guide was that you can see how many visitors we have. You can decide if it is about art or about marketing, which is what
Weird
is
opening sentence.
it is about art with good marketing. Is it possible, you think? I think it is possible. Anyway, if there are many people and it is just very popular, maybe it seems less valuable for museums, because the impression is that mass culture is not value, and this idea is coming from this, and sometimes it's true, but the point is that authenticity is very important for them, to be authentic and not be like Disneyland, only fun and nothing value. But what is authentic? And this is the question of the trousers, because there were a couple of archaeologists. So there was a lead archaeologist who had the project in Journey to the Beginnings, and every archaeological site had their own archaeologists as well, supporting the project. And some of them said that, trousers is okay. Some of them said that trousers is not okay. No one used trousers in this time, in this region. What can the artist do? Choose the easier version to follow, and it also talks about how science works. there are theories, there are ideas. Freud is a very good example for that. He is a huge scientist who is huge psychologist, and he did a lot of things. But most of the things he wrote, it's not true, or at least not like that. Somewhere it's different. So science is like this as well. Probably someone will come and will say, as an archaeologist, that they use smartphones as well, and maybe there is a proof for that. Joking, it's probably not. But there are many theories in science, and not one big truth. That's important to know.
And it's interesting to see how, I mean, even so we had Hungarian archaeologists on the team, and we had the interpretation of the museum, the Vucsadal Museum, and their views on how this culture operated was completely different. Like the Croatians had a more, let's say, liberal interpretation. They did more world building than the Hungarians. Let's just put it this way. So let's see. So of course, again, if you design a game for the museum, then the important focus is the artifacts themselves. For instance, the sarcophagus actually turned into an important plot element, a game object, which was unintended. However, it was really nice. This was so this became the crack through which you could fall into the other world. And here, the vessel, the bird vessel, this is the replica. You see here the original in the storage. So this became the focus object of a ritual, through which we were transported from modern times to the Bronze Age. So this is basically, so again, with these we wanted to create personal connections to actual items.
Actually, just one thing. It's a connection between LARP and museum, that you have an object and you create a story about the object. The difference is that museum has a story, and you can add something to the story, and you can tell the story on your own way. But yeah, objects are important.
And this is it. I mean, you have used a lot of MacGuffins for LARPs. Museums have a lot of objects, and so this is an important connection. Of course.
Museums provide the lore. Usually when
Indeed.
you do world building, you have to create the stories and the lore. And with museums, it's provided. It's just
No,
left.
it's provided in a way that you have to mine for it. You have to mine out the stories, and then again, there's an issue sometimes with in a case when you find a narrative, you find a story, and you think it's fantastic, and you show it to the museum professional. They say, well, okay, this is nice. This is an interpretation. This is one story, but what about the others? What about the other possibilities? And of course, in a game, it's impossible. In a story or in a game, it's impossible to show multiple versions if you want it to be effective. So this is definitely one of the challenges. So yeah.
What about the objects? Do they let you touch them suddenly?
We went to the museum storage once with archaeologists, and then we could touch them after a briefing. Yeah, so just like they touch it in their everyday life, probably with gloves, but yeah. In the museum, what we give to the players, it is a replica, so it's not the original one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And of course, the answer depends on the museum, but most of the time, of course, the answer is no touching.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, you have to come up with ways of how to go around it. And in the case of Vucsadal, and in the case of Journey to the Beginnings, there were replicas used. So that was one solution.
Yeah.
So yeah, museums are excellent as game space, as we discussed already. But not only. So for instance, Vucsadal, the Wolf project, that game was actually played at cultural festivals. So not directly on the museum space. And I think we could, and of course, well, the educative aspect of the museum, and of course, this is, I think, where whatever we can do, what can we teach really, even if in education, what is possible. I think the only thing that's possible is to spark curiosity. So this is what the feedback about Vucsadal was.
Yes. During a game, even if you use very authentic pieces as well, players don't know it, and 90% that you use fictional elements as well. And at the end of Journey to the Beginnings and the end of the Volley of the Wolf game as well, there was an archaeologist who helped you to fix what is real, what is authentic, and what is not. And you can ask from them, and it worked very well actually. I mean, people became curious about that period. On the left, you can see the archaeologist, who is not a real archaeologist, but an actor, but he is not in the story, like he's not in the prehistoric age. He acts like an archaeologist who asks about what did you experience and fix fix what is accurate and what is not. On the right side, you can see a picture about the debriefing after the Volley of the Wolf game. In the middle, you can see Mira. He was an archaeologist in the team, and he got many questions. And sometimes it was a half an hour discussion about Luchador culture itself, and it was very heartbreaking to hear as a feedback.
Heartwarming, you know.
Heartwarming to hear the feedbacks. Like the sentences what we wrote down at the beginning, what we want to give as a message to the players. Like, yeah, this is a very interesting culture, and thank you for having such an experience about it, and it is pretty exciting, and I was amazed, and wow, it worked, and it's an early Bronze Age culture, so people running with, I don't know, with stone axes in this time already, we know almost nothing, and I don't think that this culture is interesting in general, but somehow we could make it interesting and give a message through the game.
Yeah, the best feedback I think that we received is that, well, yeah, this should be played in schools.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is where we can. So thanks for your attention, and yeah, we're ready. And we invite you to stay here for a little bit of an extra discussion.
Okay, so should I start up there or something?
Yes, maybe
we can just pull up the chairs
yes,
and
inside still the space that is within camera's reach. Yep.
Around the table or something?
I would like to face the.
Yeah.
Yes. I will bring more water.
Yeah, and I'll get the waters.
Can we turn off the projector?
Yes.
When did you make
No?
it right now?
Wait.
Yes, for the
All right. My first. Should I start or not?
Please. You can start.
Μπορούσες να τους πας λίγο πιο πίσω.
Can you guys do just a bit to the back? To the back. Καλύτερα.
Μαζί με το
Okay.
There we go.
So.
I don't know if this is my good profile.
Okay.
You can turn.
I'm just joking, man. All right. So it so happens that I used to work for a museum for a year or something, a bit less. After finishing my studies, was a numismatic museum of Athens. So it's a coinage museum. And I was there as a IT support person. I was bored like amazing. But I had access to these back rooms that you talked about in the beginning. And I had access to the work that was done. And I was working in the places where the visitors never went. So I saw some pretty amazing stuff because there were young archaeologists there who were trying to recognize coins, and they were cataloging, and they were discussing and opening tons of books. And I find that interesting. I was so bored with nothing to do because I don't know. Sometimes the Xerox thing broke down once in 2 months. It was boring. I didn't have anything. So I had fun with them, and I realized that the biggest issue that needs to be overcome in order to achieve these wonderful experiences is to get through to museums and the people in there. Because my experience showed me that for the museum, the important things are the 3 things that you pointed out at the beginning: the research, and the items, and the taking care of them. They are definitely like a dragon on their horn. And the fact that they have to have showcases, it's something that they tolerate with. They don't like it. If they could, they would close the whole thing to everybody.
Yeah, there's one problem.
Okay.
With museums, the visitors.
And with the museums as well, between educators and scientists.
So my experience was that everybody working in that museum hated visitors. They didn't want to do anything. It was a necessary problem, and they were actually very snob against them. Like the sheep who are coming to see, or the ogres, they don't know shit. And hell, we have a school tomorrow. Holy shit! The children are gonna run around our precious halls.
Those are the worst, the little ones.
Yes, terrible. Terrible. And even the person who had to explain things to them and guide them, the guide, he didn't like them. And
Okay, so how to get to them? Like,
look, I have an analogy. I thought of it while I was watching YouTube. It's like this old grandma who cooks for the whole family. She likes to be told that her cuisine is wonderful and priceless, and no one else can cook. But she does not allow anybody in the kitchen. Okay? Nobody touches the things. Nobody even watches. Nobody is supposed to know how the hell this thing is done.
The secret ingredient.
Okay, this is my precious thing. You are only allowed to eat it just so you can tell me I'm worth it. Otherwise, I don't even care if you eat it, go fuck yourself. Okay? So, museums are like that, in my experience. And it's not a big experience, but I was inside. So I felt like I was touching holy grails that nobody else could touch. Actually, I had another similar experience. My mother happened to be a very good friend of the guy who restored the Parthenon. So once in my life, I had the privilege to walk inside the very thing. Okay, he called us and he said, okay, nobody's here, everything is closed, we can walk inside. And it was like touching holy ground, because nobody walks inside the Parthenon besides some low-life workers who have to carry the stones. Okay, but visitors, no.
after that, they just die.
Yeah, they killed them. They probably killed them like the Egyptian pyramid workers. Okay, so I was very excited to hear about the rest of the lecture, of the presentation, and see that you managed to do wonderful stuff and touch people. But my question, and this is why I made this huge introduction, my question is, how do you convince the museums? What do they get out of this?
Yes, I had the
Yeah,
same
like,
question while I was listening.
Just do it.
Because not
doing it
asking
this
for
way,
money is not
then
even enough.
normally you do that. Like,
Yeah, so
what do
basic-
you say normally?
Yes,
How do you show them that they have something to gain?
Yes.
Because in my experience, in Romania you have public state museums. The tickets are very low price. They get money from the state. They don't care about their income from the tickets. And for me, it seems that it's so much hassle for a museum to close parts of the building to have a LARP, to worry about LARPers damaging the exhibition, the cases, the something. So for me, it seems
They will have to have these workers after hours, so they
clean,
will be like,
yeah. Maybe restore the scepter of this ruler which you break during the
Oh
case
my
which
God.
was broken. So I see more inconvenience for museums if I were a museum curator, also with the bureaucracy and stuff, then I see advantages.
So this is great because this is what we're kind of preparing for, just to go through the advantages and the disadvantages, and of course, so what can we bring as LARP? And as just basically game designers, what can we bring to the museum? What value? And of course, I mean, part of it is that we'll reach a different audience. And for some museums, it is a value. And again, not all museums are created equal. So there are some forward-looking ones that are quite receptive of new ideas. Well, yeah. So how do we reach them?
So work there and know the people. It is a bit harder.
you need an inside man, you need a spy,
Yeah,
fix it.
this is what I call champion. So yeah, you need an inside man. But the point is that it is true that there are many museums or many museums professionals who are like this, who fuck visitors.
Yes.
It is also true that museums, according to my experience in general, in Hungary, has no money or almost no money from visitors, because this is not the goal. They need visitors to say on the museum conference that we had more visitors than last year. We have many visitors. We have more visitors. We have all of the visitors, etc., etc. Generally, it's like this. It's not like 5,000, 15,000, 10% growth, etc. So it's like
basically, if we will be on the meeting with the like the most important guy, we will say, okay, this is the graph that we can 100% use. That you will have 10% more visitors in the next year if you will go with us. And then
probably he is not that much about the numbers. Probably he is very he wants to give the or tell the message of the museum to everyone. And if you say that, hey, I give you a tool to say this message to 10 more people, that's 10 more people. It's a new target group, a new audience.
So it's a matter of prestige. That's what you did.
It's matter of prestige as well, and not only about the number of the visitors. It is also about the tools and the methodologies and the cooperation. So it is a possible presentation about cooperation between museums and LARPers for the museum as well, which means that it is an innovative museum trying new methods.
And I have a question. If there will be a LARP, because right now I have this idea in my head.
Yeah.
If there will be a LARP, when it will be a LARP about like this museum that came into life, like the films, and part of this LARP, it will be a thing that people will have roles of like employees.
Yeah.
I think it can be good because they will appreciate work of the employees, so their ego, like this grandma, could be like, yeah,
Yeah.
we see, we are important people.
Yes.
And also it would be important to communicate the museums how it works.
Yeah.
It's important because if you have a curator character, you will understand what is their what is his or her position, what is the aspects what he or she interested in.
So that's a way of bringing it closer to the museums. That's it. So just so I want to connect to. So again, you need an inside man. You need a well-placed gamer or LARPer or whoever is more forward-looking. There, some museums have these kind of people, and again, there are lots of other museums that look for there's a shift from collection to experience, I think, and some museums do it more than others. Yeah, another thing that you could also do that we have been doing. I mean, all of these games, all the two games that we mentioned, so Journey to the Beginnings and the Wuchadol game, so Return to Reality of the Wolf, were created as part of an EU project. So museums were involved as partners in these EU projects, and they actually
Like Erasmus things?
not Erasmus, not Erasmus. Different. I mean, there was an Interreg, and the other was Creative Europe.
Creative Europe, yeah.
Creative Europe. So there are different frameworks, mostly cultural frameworks, that are quite good for museums, and they I mean, again, this is about creating connection between borders. So that was mostly the Vučedol project. So it was about so the culture itself is quite known in Croatia, but it's unknown, completely unknown in Hungary.
Okay, one more question about how did you deal with like I'm 100% they've been scared that you will like break everything in the museum. When you're like starting the lab and there's exhibitions, yeah, there are some fake things, but still there are some real ones there, and there was no problem with that you have to secure the area.
In the National Museum, we put the games within the exhibition, which are like you just sit and play or stand and play. So if you have to move, we didn't put it there. Anyway, there are museum education events in the exhibitions as well. So there are games what we created as museum employees. So it's not. There are some museums where you enter to the exhibition and it's like only with eyes. But there are more and more museums where you can talk normally. You can play with kids. It's a very general tool for many museums. He has pillows to let the kids sit down on the floor in the exhibition.
Nice.
So it's getting better and better.
Yeah, so for instance, the game that I first showed you about the urban fantasy game in the Roman lapidarium, that was so we got instructions on how to use the space. What parts can we step on? There is like in the middle of it there was a massive mosaic, and so that was an off limits area. So we actually placed LED candles around it to show that area is off limits. So yeah, of course, I mean the first part of the briefing was about this, that hey, don't break the museum. This is, just treat it with respect, this is an honor, this is a privilege that we're here. And yeah, we didn't have issues.
Who had the responsibility? I'm going to be a bore. Who had the responsibility, like, legally?
In terms of
Okay, I jump in the
Destroying
mosaic.
something.
Destroying the
Yeah.
national
I am an idiot, I jump in the mosaic, I spill my coffee.
liability was, I think, handled through the event. So there was I mean, you signed up for an event at the museum game show, and what was the liability? Was there any?
There wasn't any. So it was like
Pray,
really-
nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, so in the contract it was like if we damage something, we will pay for it.
But this is invaluable, there is no price tag.
Yeah, with an artifact.
I love
Actually,
it. I love
it really
What was
rarely
it?
happens.
Thing is,
So-
basically, just to give you a problem more, so again, what you did when you get into this event, you paid for the museum ticket. So you were a museum visitor. So first,
You are allowed to be there.
you were allowed to be there. So again, this is it. It was so whatever you
Okay.
do as a museum visitor, it was down to you as a person. So that was basically again.
So
there
you
was no
were not
specific.
responsible for the guys participating.
There was not a
Okay.
yeah. So
This is
again,
important.
liability was handled in this case. You were if you came to play, you were still first a museum visitor, and you had
Yeah.
to pay the ticket for the event, which also
This is
included
really
your
important for
entrance
them.
fee. Yeah, it's an important legal question. So
Yeah, it wasn't our event in the museum. It was our event together with the museum.
the
Okay.
museum was a party.
Yeah.
The
that's
reason
an
why I
important thing.
focus on this, and
Oh, yeah.
maybe some people are bored by this, is I'm supposed to think all of this idea through the lens of schools and children. And when children go to the museum, the teacher is the visitor and he's liable for the actions of the children. He has to keep them in line. The school is responsible.
Yeah.
You cannot hold a 5-year-old responsible for breaking something. Okay, so this changes things a bit. It has to be. I'm not trying to be disappointing here. I'm just saying this is important.
Actually, in terms of damaging artifacts in museums, we have some cases. I did a study on that like a few years ago.
I thought you were gonna say you broke something.
No, I haven't broken anything in any museums, but the people that have, yes, the people that have, basically, like the common line that I have found in all the museums, I was focusing on museums in Britain and the US. I don't know if this also applies here, but it seems to be that the directive is that, okay, if somebody breaks something, there is no way to persecute them because there is no way to extract damages, basically. So, in the eyes of the law, the museum is responsible for keeping the artifact safe. If you're a visitor, the museum is responsible for not letting you destroy the artifacts.
Nice. So it's like,
Yeah.
That's
yeah, for
interesting.
us it's good.
But they
For
can
them,
ban you for life, and everybody who has ever broken something in a museum has been banned for life from that museum.
Okay.
It's like still,
I can live with that.
That
It's
explains
a low price for the. Yeah,
Probably
but
it changes
So
country by
first,
country, but it makes sense anyway.
Probably
so
also
first you
museum
should
per
visit
museum.
the museum,
Yeah.
That
to make
explains.
sure that you have seen it,
Yes.
and then play
And
the
then,
card.
yes,
So
yes.
if you get banned, at least you have seen the museum before.
Yeah. Okay, that gives a lot of more credit to why museum personnel hate.
Now I understand many things.
So,
Anyway, it is not like go and try to get banned from the
No, no, no,
museum.
Like April this year, I was doing events in museum in Krakow, art museum, and they told me, but we must, you must buy tickets. We don't want to earn any money, but this is,
Yeah.
bureaucracy. So you buy tickets for 2 zlotys per person. So I bought all of them, like 50 tickets, like on an invoice for Nausicaa. I paid by card, and I put it in my bag. Yeah, okay, paid. And they told, no, you must to give it this piece of paper to each of the people coming. And I thought, why all this, Why be so formal, yeah, about it? And now I understand. It's actually I was passing the responsibility for this. I was making them participants of the museum, not of Nausicaa, and I should be happy for that. And I will do the same.
Bureaucracy is not always a bad thing.
Sometimes it's on our side. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the talk and the discussion. We'll need to go in a short break because Elena will have to take over after this for her own talk. So
Okay.
again, I would like to thank.
I thank you all also for opening my mind because I'm gonna think about all this a lot.
Thank you, and we can continue it informally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Are
Yeah.
we done in the cafe?
Yes, the monks.
Yes.
Oh, there is
Oh,
there's
that
some
you're
more.